I think maybe Bibi's correct, and this whole Gaza resettlement thing is not realistic, but not because of why he thinks it's not realistic. You know why it's not realistic? Let's take uh, a step back. Let's go into the time machine a little bit. Because we tried it once before and we failed. There had been Jewish settlement in Gaza. You know why it failed? Because of Jews. It failed because over the course of almost the 38 years that the Jews had been present in Gaza, basically, they only managed to get about less than 7,000 Jews to settle there, and they didn't get the public behind it, and they allowed their own politicians to destroy it. And most importantly, why not? Because we didn't drive out the bad guys. The Jews just went into Gaza and lived there, and they had to have corridors. And have you ever been to Gaza? Yeah. Oh, I mean Gaza, Jewish Gaza. Yeah, thank God you've been to Gaza. So now you've seen where the Jews used to live. When I was your age, you could still visit Gaza, Gush Katif. So I'm surprised I never went there. I feel really bad. It's one of my biggest regrets. But the reason it failed was because Gaza was so full of Amalekites. So the states have let it slip. Okay, basically, what have they said? I'm reminded. This is what the rabbi told me last week when I challenged what he said, and he not the rabbi who was here. He said we're supposed to have a king first. We can't do milchemes mitzvah. We can't build a base. Make this. We're supposed to have a king first. So they're what? Because the Rambam says, he quotes the Gemara, the three mitzvahs the Jewish people were given when they went to the land of Israel. Lebanos lahem melech, lachri zaro shalom malek, and livnos is base of Bechira. So what you're telling me you want to build a base of Mikdash, Grossman? Why don't you get a king first? So wait a minute, yeah, so why don't you have a king first? And people are focused too much on the tuffle. They think king means, purple cape and crown, right, and a scepter, right? You don't have a king and holding a Sefer Torah. But hold on 1 second. But that's not the Iker. Okay? And they also think the anointment, the Mashiach thing that has oil in his head, right? What? Because the halacha says you're supposed to anoint the king. And he's called the Messiah, the Mashiach, because he's anointed. If there's a taromet, if there's a challenge, so you do anoint him. We went through this, that he's not going to be anointed, doesn't need to be. You're correct. But the point is, they focus too much on the outer trappings of a king, instead of thinking the Iker is that the kings has a Torah leadership role. And like the Rambam says, we had many kings who didn't wear crowns, that didn't have purple capes, and weren't called king, and were not anointed, but they still did a very good job at it. What's his best examples? Yoshua, yeah, like the Rambam says, and Gidon. Okay, so what did King David wear? Right? What did his crown look like? When we talk about these things, we know about Shlomo Melech. It describes how opulent his palace was, and all the gold and silver he had, and the special throne he made, right? And the fact that he sat on the throne, right? Apparently he had a crown, yeah. So the Gemara talks about the crown that fit King David's line had a special indent, and only the ones with the special skull were able to fit them properly. But when we read about King David, we don't hear about the opulence and the outer trappings of kingship. We hear about how he served God, his chasidus, his poetry, and his fighting God's wars. And Shlomo Melech is an entirely different type of model. Okay, basically, David, Saul, and Joshua were men of the people. Did Saul even have a palace? It says at his house, Saul's house. Apparently, he had a regular house, like everybody goes, yeah, sure, maybe a little bit better than most people, but still, he was a regular person when he became king. And he stayed like a regular person. Eventually got to his head, but he was a regular person. So the first thing we need is a leader who wants to make it succeed, and the people need the fortitude to do what's necessary. You need leadership. If we want to succeed in settling, Gaza, we're going to need proper leadership first. That's what you say. So why are you appointing a leader? I've asked this to people. There are people who claim to be the Sanhedrin. So my question to them was, I asked their ringleader, said, you first have to have someone in charge. If you really have the courage of your conviction, so you have to have someone, who's going to fight this battle? Who's the general? Where's the shofet at least? Give me a yiftach. Appoint a yiftach at least. And then you'll be able to talk about this. But for now, unless the Jewish people actually get their act together and are committed to having proper leadership, and that's the Gerush and Kibush part, then the Hit Yashvut won't work. Okay, so that's why Torah Eretz Yisrael is fun. We learn Torah Eretz Yisrael using in the synagogue and in the home is fun, right? You like it, okay? Torah Eretz Yisrael, whatever it is, but it has a certain appeal to certain people, but it has to be implemented on the national level. That's why we have these videos coming out now. Why? Because lack of Torah Eretz Yisrael spills over into one's national outlook or lack thereof. The Haredi outlook, even until today, let's say the most orthodox outlook, that is not Torah Eretz Yisrael. I mean, all of orthodoxy is good as long as they're studying Torah and they're committed to the Torah, it's fine. But the ones who are most not with Torah Eretz Yisrael, politically speaking, they have no plan to run the country, right? They don't have any plan, any concrete idea about how we should be fighting our wars, running a country, building a base of mikdash. That's not part of their Judaism. And so too anywhere in Chutz La'aretz. Even let's say take the yeshivas, the major yeshivas in America, the major Jewish communities also. YU and the OU and Agudas Yisrael and the yeshivas in Baltimore and Lakewood have no national Jewish plan. And they're not creating Jewish people who are part of that plan. They're creating great Jews. They're creating many Balabatim and scholars who are very much committed to keeping the Torah for the long term, right? There's a people I know, but well,
what are you guys in trouble?
And even in let's say Beit Shemesh, we're full of people like this, but there's no concrete plan. They're very happy with the Judaism they have. Oh, they're happy with their Judaism in Eretz Yisrael, which is also very big. And they raise their children. The next generation is going to be a lot stronger, but they have no plan. They haven't put. There's only one guy who's been saying this, and he hasn't gotten enough help or support for this. They wanted. They're so happy. Bennett has a yarmulke, but how that did anything change? Did his premiership, despite its brevity, did it show you how an Orthodox person who really keeps the Torah is going to do something differently? Absolutely not, because his form of Judaism is same politics as everybody else. Basically, you got your lapid, but he wears a yarmulke, and maybe he goes to shul on Shabbos. Maybe he keeps a kosher home. I'm not going to comment on whether he doesn't. And that's what everybody does. Here's another fellow. Could have been any other clean-shaven guy who has a YU degree and also has smicha and works as an accountant in Teaneck or in Beit Shemesh. But his Judaism does not inform how he runs the country, how he fights the war, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a problem. We haven't created that yet.
Well, it seems a lot of people who they're very orthodox when it comes to an individual over them as you go up these things, what the United States going to do.
Yeah.
I understand. They seem to become too much Muslim, in this.
Yeah, that's a problem. Even Ben Gurion was understood that on the national level we have to be so many holidays. I mean, a Jewish person, a single individual, is not supposed to jump off a cliff and say, God will save me. However, the Jewish people are supposed to sometimes put everything in God's hands, especially when it comes to war. Yeah, God said to do that. So that's not Ein Somchin Al Nes. And even Ben Gurion got that, and to a lesser extent Moshe Dayan. He was a real, he really, anybody had a fight with God, that was him. But at least he fought to win, and now we have nothing.